Alright, draft physics video comments. Oh, brother. Alright, now look. I made you know, my video wasn't in any way rude. I didn't call Einstein an idiot. I didn't do anything obnoxious. I speculated and argued why some evidence is not strong evidence, and that I think there's reason to believe there could be other mechanisms responsible for what they claim to be responsible. And these comments are just obnoxiously rude, these comments that people make. And I don't have any obligation to accept that. As stated before, I can't go into your lives, asshole, and walk into your bedroom and tell you how, man, you make love shitty. I mean, you got no rhythm at all. You got small penis and no rhythm. You really do suck, and you smell, and you're ugly. I mean, I really don't do that. And even if I had the right to do it, I wouldn't do it. I mean, I have the right to go on people's videos and type shit for comments, but I don't do that. Because I'm not an idiot, or an asshole, or a hunk of shit. So yeah, you're the one who has some obligation to present your counter theory with some measure of respect. And if you can't do that, then fuck off. Or I'll make you fuck off. Clearly. And that's what you're asking for, clearly. You don't have an argument, so you're just going to troll in the typical weasel troll manner. Do it so rudely that no self-respecting person would tolerate it. And therefore you win because you forced them to react to your inability to make an argument. An argument related to what was stated in the video. Whatever this straw man shit is. Like something else was said. Anyway, so lots of comments. So I'll read them. It's going to probably take 2 or 3 videos. Complex. Some of the subjects are, complex. So Gus Fling, who's, like I said, your time here is limited. If you can't clean it up, you can't treat me with respect, then fuck you. I don't have any obligation to tolerate you. Again, give me access to your life. Give me a right to paint on your car, you're an asshole, and force you to wipe it off. Give me some access to troll your life. So make a video so I can troll you. Okay, then it's a fair fight. So go ahead and make a video of your own original content, not stealing anybody else's, your content. And let me deface it, like you have defaced my video. You cunt. Then, we'll talk about a fair fight. Alright, a photon actually is defined very well. By who? Einstein went to his grave saying, after 50 years of studying photons, I still don't know what the fuck they are. Einstein. There's no need to make a photon out of 2 anything. Well, I explained why there is sort of a need, okay, because frequency is fundamentally, in most other cases, a consequence of things moving at a frequency. Thing happens, and then like the cars on a train, they're tied together. So when the sound goes by, click, 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 it has a frequency because they're all tied together. And as they go by, each one makes a sound. That's the nature of it. So there can be a need to do that, certainly. And the alternative, your theory, is some ambiguous woo-woo wavies. 2 wig-wag-wah. Waves in what? Okay, doing how? How do they do that? You don't have anything. Nothing. That's not well defined. That's entirely undefined. Okay. Although there are more fundamental particles, they aren't called twans. It's tons, but whatever. And of course they are. Now, I mean, physics uses virtual ones called gravitons and magnetons. You're going to deny that truth? They invented those words, by the way. I didn't invent those words. They used them first. I'm using them as something as real, and they're using it as something virtual. So why don't you mock them for not only using a Tuan word, but on top of that, you're using a virtual fairy word, a fairyton, fairytons. So again, what's the point of this useless? This isn't a counter argument, by the way. It's just tripe, and they have nothing to do with the wavelength. Well, obviously the frequency has something to do with the wavelength when something is moving a constant, the speed of light. Yeah, the two things are inversely related then, idiot. Man, you're dumb. Alright, and then the mindless control says, what is your motivation here, question mark? You need to realize that by making comments you are immediately at a disadvantage. No, it's the other way around. Like I said, give me access to your life, mindless. Why don't you put up so I can mock you? I can mock how short, fat, and how micro your penis is. Give me access to your life and let me ridicule you based on everything you touch. Because that's all you're doing, jackass. You're a petty person. And that's all. There was nothing in this video at all aggressive beyond me speculating that physics might have taken a few wrong turns. You, on the other hand, said, no, that's not possible. All of our big giant brains couldn't have possibly gotten something wrong. In spite of the fact that it's a known truth that they can't even agree on whether there's many worlds or whether there's Copenhagen or whether there's whatever the third choice is, which is loop-de-doo fairy dust. The whole physics is littered with examples of indecisiveness and explanations that don't make any sense. The gravity wave theory. Let's convert mass into bent space. That's okay. No one's paying attention. We can do that. And we'll put Einstein's name on it. We'll say, look, Einstein's proven accurate. We're converting mass into bent space. Because Einstein's never said we could do that, but so what? We'll put his name on it and it'll make it sound like it's legitimate. You can't see how physics has lots of problems. Okay. I think that's your problem. It's not something broken in me. It's something broken in you, fuckhead. Alright. The guy up there, the face you see when you scroll a little bit up, so this is really not on the subject of the video at all, right? You're just doing a critique on me for no good reason whatsoever. Again, there was nothing in my video outrageous. I didn't do a Ken Wheeler. I didn't talk about how Einstein's a child molester. I didn't do any of that shit. And yet I'm getting this crap from assholes like you. Petty weasels. Can't make a counter argument. Alright. Can keep making videos and do whatever he wants with the comments. Well, again, why should I pay any attention to people that can't do anything reasonable? You walk into somebody else's living room and you take a shit? Is that how you behave? No, you don't do that. You walk up to people on the sidewalk and go, hey, fat ass. You do that? No. You're the rude, obnoxious assholes here. You're the ones that can't behave in a civil manner. You dumb cunt. Can't obey the simplest manner rules. You have no fucking manners, you farting, belching, puking, shitting piece of crap. You drooling pig. Fuck. Alright. James McGinn. Defined very well, question mark. That's a damn good question. But is it accurate? Yeah, well, it can't be accurate because they have more than one story, so obviously it can't be accurate. One of them, two of them, three of them got to be wrong. String theory and quantum field theory and blah 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 and mega string, they all can't be right. Anyway, is it true? How do you know? That should be another question mark. Gary's definition may also be very well. The point is I'm making arguments and providing evidence why I am doubtful and why I think another theory better explains the data and explains it in a way that unifies physics. Doesn't break physics into a bunch of unphysical things. It actually gives you physics that's physical No woo, no dark matter, no virtual shit, no no bullshit, no wavy nonsense. All right, hard, real shit, physical things interacting, physical in the sense of discrete, identifiable somethings versus nothings. So I'm saying it wins because it's physics, it wins because it's unifiable, and it wins because I think it's a simple explanation of the evidence. Less moving bits is a better bit. A part that does something with fewer movements is the better part. Anyway. Or it could even be better. How do you know? That's what matters. No, it's not what matters. The fact that these people are claiming authority, first off, and then not citing authorities. They don't have the guts to post me links to actual physics lectures. Why not force me to go watch some other Susskind video or some other thing where it's proven, where we're given this hard evidence? Well, because those don't exist. Yeah, that's right. Because the experimental data isn't conclusive. Alright. Superior mind to Gus. No, if you don't... If you go into any forums and ask around or check anywhere on the internet, you'll get a lot of different answers, obviously, on what a photon is. Photon as represented as discrete particles under some circumstances as mechanical waves. Mechanical wave doesn't mean much to me, frankly. But anyway, under other circumstances. And some kind of voodoo bullshit under others. There's lots of inconsistency out there. Typically people will say you can define a single photon based on E equals HF, but this is not indicative of a discrete item since it is taking joules per second and multiplying by ascribed frequency. Well, you know, obviously it's look, energy is the problem. The E is the real problem in the equation because energy isn't something well defined. Energy is really just what I've said before, is an imbalance. And that's when you see something. Everything has energy. Right now, all my nuclear bits can go nuclear. You know, if a few neutrons fly into me, enough, all of my nuclear bits will chain react and I will expand in size by, you know, huge dimensions. And that will be essentially a release of the tension created inside of me by a bunch of compression. You know, magnetic attraction. And that'll be broken. And all these bits will be released to their original trajectories. You know, the energy's there. So this idea of what energy is a little bit messy. I would argue that it's just basically it can be quantized, and that's what the Planck numbers indicate. So these people argue this stuff, and yet they'll not. If I made something like Planck was a child molester, you know, if I did something to say constants don't exist, they would certainly defend the existence of those constants. And so why are they making these arguments? Because though the existence of the Planck constants is really basically a definition of the fact of the discrete quantization ability. You can quantize these forces, all of them. And that should say something to you, that they're not woo-woo, wavy things. Anyway, all this is telling us how much detectable interacting energy occurs within the same time period based on an ascribed frequency based on detectable interaction. Well, look, it's obviously something that expands this fast versus something that expands this fast. Okay, the faster thing is going to have more energy, but for it to move faster, okay, it has to utilize more ton conversions. More conversions have to happen in that amount of time. So the energy isn't in the bits, it's in the thing moving the bits. it's more force because it has to be more interactions to create that higher velocity for the atomic bits. You can't move atoms faster with the same amount of interactions. You have to have more interactions. Alright, mindless ass cunt. Superior mind. You get a lot of different answers. That's because they're idiots. I don't know. Who are you talking about now? Why are you answering a question like that? You'll get a lot of different answers. Why don't you just concede the point that photons, there isn't any clear, decisive evidence making their identity known, their structure or their mechanics. They're very small. They're very difficult to see in any way. You can only see them as I stated. I actually stated this in my fucking video. You can only see them by how they affect electrons. There's no other known way to see a photon. Now, if you can tell me there's some other way to see one, fine, make that argument. But there isn't. Why don't you just concede? There was nothing unreasonable about my video, making that point. There's a lot of inconsistency out there, so now he's quoting Superior Mind. Oh my God, seriously, if you knew just a modicum of quantum formalism, you would realize that there's no... I hit that more button, of course. No problem with this. So the fact that there's a bunch of inconsistent interpretations about the fundamental mechanisms of the universe, multiverses versus Copenhagen, that is of no significance. No, I think that's pretty significant, fucker. This is, I mean, Einstein going to his grave saying, 50 years of studying photons, I don't know them any better than I did 50 years ago. Doesn't mean it. No, not a problem. This is really, this is the really neat thing. It says you. It's neat to you because apparently you think because they can invert two numbers and make them match each other, or they can find 14 different ways to describe a wavelength, you know, mathematically. That's fun. When it's basically just the same equation perverted. Yeah. Let's use h bar, or let's just use h. Yeah. Isn't that all fun? This is such a tragedy that no one bothers to learn it beyond what is spooned as some duality meme. Well, again, learn what from who? I've watched Susskind. I've watched the other guy. I've watched the Yale guy. You know, frankly, where's your authority? Where do you get this notion that the real scientists know what they're doing? Where are they, the real scientists? It literally tells you where something displays particle-like behavior and where something displays wave-like behavior. Well, I'm just watching Susskind right now, and he doesn't seem to have that nailed down. But people keep bastardizing this on and on. People like Susskind. Alright, E equals HF. So another quote, I guess, is taking joules per unit frequency. Your units are wrong. H is joules times seconds, not per. I don't know. The distinction again would be what? I mean, you're still going to end up with a number that is a percentage per unit of time. A percentage of a whole per unit measured in time. So how does it make any difference? Alright, anyway. James McGrin points out MM. If you know just a modicum of quantum formalization, no problem with this. Okay, so his response to that is the dualism inherent to QM is the problem, dumbass. Well, look, Susskind basically says quantum mechanics is really just about one thing. It's Heisenberg. All it really is the uncertainty principle. The idea that you can't know two things about something. And that he even says that yes, when you measure one thing, you fuck with it. Now, he doesn't say fuck, but he says a word similar to that. You mess with it. And therefore, you can't measure the second thing because you messed up the measurement with the first measurement. You already broke the thing, and now you can't measure it accurately as it was because you've changed it. And he even points out how it creates these irregularities in the math where all of a sudden 2 times 2 and 2 times 2 doesn't give you the same answer because by the time you got to the second 2, by measuring the first 2, the second 2 got fucked up and isn't 2 anymore. So although it was 2 times 2 in the reality, you ended up with something else because when you measured the 2, you fucked up the other 2. Anyway. Oh God, I cannot. My eyes are just so bad. Frickin' pay attention. Gary has made this clear repeatedly in his videos, and you are so delusional you can't grasp this simple assertion or its significance to the discussion. Yes. Dualism is dumb. Yeah. You can make waves out of particles. You can't make particles out of waves. Anyway, the dualism, so Gus says, the dualism presents psychological difficulties but is well defined. Well, again, how do you well define this dualism? Except in a manner that is completely by convenience. That's all. When it's going somewhere, it's a wave. When it gets there, it's not. We won't explain any of that, though. Yeah. I'm sorry. That's not what I would call well defined. It's not well evidenced. It's not something you arrogantly walk around beating other people with the club of your truth. You have to argue in defense of it, not argue from your authority. To tell other people what you demand they believe, or you'll ridicule them and insult them. Alright, let me add also, mindless, to who? Add what? Why don't you add it by just editing your own comments? You know how to edit comments. If you bozos don't know what a Fontanier transform, you are unqualified to speak on what's inconsistent and what is on this matter. Well, says you again. So this whole, again, the interference pattern and this whole concept of wave. You're saying there's no other interpretation, no way that this data can be interpreted in any other way, and we must accept your statements about what the relationship is and why that relationship exists. And we don't have to do that. That's another fact that you keep denying, which is exactly what people with the Dunning-Kruger effect do. So again, this idiotic notion that you're of the superior knowledge base and you know what you're doing and everybody else is incompetent. Yeah, fuck you. If it makes you feel scared, no, it irritates the fuck out of me, or sad or confused. Yeah. Well, I guess that's how you feel about your tiny penis, you dickless fuck. Why do you again? Why don't you show me how you talk to other people on Earth this way, you cunt? And don't get punched in the face. Why don't you do this to somebody on the street and videotape it, just so I can watch you get the shit kicked out of you as you deserve? Not mine, and certainly not the problem of QM. So again, he doesn't think quantum mechanics has any problems. Now, besides the fact that it's mush and completely inconsistent with the other force theories they've invented to explain the rest of the universe's function. Alright, so superior mind to mindless marbles. I mean, these don't really show up in any kind of rational order. That's because they're idiots. No, many of them are indeed physics experts. Yeah, I'd say all of them are, and I've played them completely butchering the facts of the two-slit experiment. And these people will still talk as if those aren't the experts. Those are just cartoon characters. No. Those are highly paid physics lecturers at really expensive universities, butchering the truth. Some lecturers. If you proclaim they are all idiots, then you're just redefined the word. Since it's so easy to define a photon, go ahead and do it. It is said that if you truly understand something, then you should be quite easy to explain it comprehensively. Einstein. Draw a picture of it. Show me the mechanics. I've seen an awful lot of different representations so far. Pilot wave, EMF, propagation, discrete or not. Yeah, counter space is a good one too. Why don't you show me, do you want to draw a picture of some of that counter space? If you understand it as a something, draw it. Show what it does. Let's see it then. Yeah, let's see this mechanical thing functioning. When exactly does it do this wavy thing? How exactly does it do this thing? It goes through the whole width of the slit, and then the two little end pieces fly off. Well, yeah, why don't you and show me what this field is made out of, right? And how the field works. What's the field made out of? The original point is that it isn't well defined, and really isn't. How are you so cocksure of the characteristics of something which barely even interacts with matter most of the time? Yeah, and when it does, it primarily interacts, the way we see it, is with electrons. Not protons, but primarily with electrons. I mean, there's obviously tons involved between electrons and protons, but they're not photons. They're not at a frequency. Let's see, could it be that there's being ascribed to the photon but really belong to the electron? Right, exactly. So these are just points I made in the video, is that all the characteristics that they have given photons rationally, because of this fact that the only way we see photons is based on their interactions with electrons, that you could actually give all the properties to the electron, and the photons don't have to have any properties at all. So, say JS, or joules per cycle, when each one is a different length. So that's what I meant, and you failed to understand my point. If they're a different length, then naturally they'll be at a higher rate of occurrence, of course. Obviously, if you want to make something more numbers, then just put an H bar. You want to say a chicken is 1 trillion feathers. Okay, it doesn't matter. It's still a chicken. The quantity of the interacting bits are different, and we brand this interaction as a photon at the frequency. Don't you see? Okay, that's a little bit too blah 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 for me to be able to read it and know what the hell it was at the same time. You bozos don't even know what a frontier transform is. Childish. Facepalm. By the way, it's frontier, but whatever. Either way, yes. Frankly, all I know is it's wave mechanic bullshit. Superior mind. It doesn't matter if we can explain it in the way that you understand. A person can understand something well, but if he tried to explain it to a gorilla, so this is Gus talking. So, now he's just going to call other people gorillas. And that's why they don't understand. So if I say it seems kind of silly that physics would embarrass itself in a way by just doing this open speculating about silly multiverses and all these different theories about explaining why one photon goes in and somehow 2 photons are in the middle, and then somehow 1 photon ends up at the target, and they come up with these wacky explanations for how that all happens, and it's kind of embarrassing for physics. But we're the gorillas. Oh, shit. Alright. So, the gorilla is not going to understand it, you know. So again, he's calling superior mind a gorilla. Anybody who disagrees with this idiot is a gorilla now. And again, there was nothing in my video to provoke that kind of bullshit, and I don't have to accept it as acceptable. It's not acceptable negotiation or argument. You can't do that. You can't show up at a debate forum and go, hey, you're a fat, stupid gorilla. I mean, you're supposed to be arguing abortion, and that's what you say. Fuck you. You really are done here. So unless your next comment is perfectly pristine, you're fucking done. You haven't tried to explain shit. I don't think you have a clue how photons work or what they are. Well, obviously he has a religion. He has a dogma told to him by his mother or something, apparently. Some kind of tit he was suckling on. And he obviously can't find any fault with that tit. And so he's going to have to defend it, no matter how much it's saggy. You know, no matter how black the milk coming out of it is. It's mommy's. I already told you, it's not that I can't explain it. Well, yes, it is. It's that I don't think you're smart enough to understand it if I did try to explain. Well, again, I already pointed out, I've already played the clips. I could play Susskind now over and over if you want me to. Being inaccurate in describing the simplest experiment in physics. You can't explain accurately a two-slit experiment. And yet you trust these fuckers on much more complex experiments. They can't explain a simple one right. They can't interpret a simple one right. And yet you think their interpretation of complex, radioactive, very complex, multi-stage experiments and machinery, you trust their interpretation of what's actually happening. The lightning goes to Pluto. You know, there's a positive charge on the cloud, on the top of the cloud, and it bounces off Pluto, and Pluto throws it back even harder, and the extra hardness goes through the cloud and then becomes lightning. I can come up with any kind of wacky theory, and if I'm a show physicist, that's okay. Sure, I'll believe it. I'm Gus. I believe anything. Fuck you. Go back and read my other comment about apes not understanding physics. So again, why would that be a positive argument in your defense, idiot? That's basically pointing out that you can't make an argument and you have to resort to these gratuitously putrid and silly insults. Alright, you simply don't understand photons. It's abundantly obvious that you make no attempt to explain them. All you can do is proclaim knowledge and call people apes like a simple-minded child. Yeah, it's worse than that. It's the most despicable kind of cunts on earth. Like I said, you don't walk into somebody else's house and behave this way. You don't walk into a restaurant and behave this way. You don't walk into anything and behave this way. If you're right, you should be able to prove you're right without going low. Alright, that's irrelevant, dumbass. You can it can be well defined and wrong. Try to follow. So that's James. I don't think it's well defined, but yes, it's wrong and ill-defined. So he says to GF, whoever that is now, I guess that's Gus. The dualism presents psychologically, so again, he thinks dualism is only some kind of psychological problem. It's not a physical problem of something being two things at the same time. It's silly. It can be well defined and wrong. Try to follow. Irrelevant, dumbass. It can be well defined and wrong. I think the same comment twice. I don't know. So his response to James is, fuck you. I know that. I'm responding to the claim that photons are not well defined. Gary knows that photons are well defined. No, Gary doesn't think photons are at all defined well, in the sense that I don't think photons have any powers at all. I think photons go, as Feynman would say, from point A to point B in a straight line at the speed of light. unless they hit an electron. That's what I think photons are, okay? I think photons are the simplest thing in the universe. And I think you idiots haven't figured that out, that it's the electrons that are causing photons to do something. If a photon does something not usual, like going straight, it's because an electron made it not go straight. Idiot. Jeez. He just doesn't like the definition, and I'm pointing out that not liking something is not the same as that something not existing. No, you're not doing any of that. Look, I made a polite argument about why I believe differently, and I explained, in my video, in the actual video you're responding to, I explained why I think this concept of photons as some sort of wavy thing is totally unnecessary. It's tons at a frequency, and that's its quanta. And that's the Planck constant. When you take that to its limit, that's where you hit the Planck constant, is the ultimate quickest frequency. And that's how it works, idiot. And everything's a multiple of that distance. Idiot. Alright, this is so fucking rude. Anyway, let's see. And I'm pointing out the same, that something non-existing. Why can't you pay attention, you dumb white trash fucking... So I don't even know what this... Again, it just gets worse and worse, right? You dumb white trash fucking half-past weatherman. Yeah. What's obvious is you have psychological problems. Not that dualism causes psychological problems. It's clear that you have psychological problems. Not that we all don't. Neither of you addressed the fact that I managed to cover one of the slits. Oh, here's mindless marbles again. Okay, well, this ought to be funny. I hope I have time. Neither of you addressed the fact that I managed to cover one of the slits at 3 centimeters away. Okay, so he took a 2-slit experiment that basically is done traditionally with a center impediment that isn't any wider than a human hair, just about, and 2 slits that are like half of a human hair. And he claims that at 3 centimeters he was able to block, he was able to cut right through that half of a human hair. So at 3 centimeters, with his own eyes, he could figure out where half a human hair is. Yeah. He could stop at it's like me stop my finger and saying, okay, that's exactly a half a human hair. I can't even keep my finger steady. And this is with paper. Okay, so he's doing the 2-slit experiment with cut paper, which Piro says, don't even bother, you're an idiot, waste of time. So why don't you argue with Piro? Anyway. So, yeah, and he showed these crappy images. He doesn't show a video of the experiment being done. He doesn't even show a good sequence of images. But I'm just saying, he says that he can stop the interference pattern by blocking one of the slits. No, you can't. Yeah, no, you can't. No hope. Anyway, let's see. Cover one of the slits at 3 centimeters away. In his review of the Leonard Sitzkind lecture, he postulated that the double slit has EM fields around it or something influencing the output. Well, you can say it's something. I haven't been all that vague about this. I've called it a lens. I've said that as you move the two materials closer and closer together, the electrons are moved closer and closer together. And electrons don't like each other, so they're going to bulge. Okay, and we've seen field lines. They're magnetic field lines. You've seen those. You've seen electric field lines. You have seen them. That's how they behave. They arc. So why are you pretending that I've been ambiguous or something, or this it's kind of gray or unknown space? Like nobody could possibly talk about how electrons would line up straight between two plates, right? Nobody could figure that out, and that as you compress the plates, the charge would start to push out because the electrons, the same number of electrons, can't exist in that space. That's not possible. Anyway. He postulated that the double slit has EM fields around it or something influencing the output. Yeah, there's no or something. I said there's electrons, and it's electrons that are causing the photons to be deflected, because that's what changes the direction of a photon. Is it goes into an electron, the electron moves. When the electron goes backwards, the photon's emitted in the direction the electron was going. So if the electron moves in an arc, then the direction it was going isn't going to be the same as the direction it's going now. Just like when the Earth is circulating the sun, if I release the Earth at any point, it's going to be going a different straight line. Is that too hard to understand? Is that like a mystery theory? No. So this straw man, this pretense that I haven't articulated or stated what I think is a reasonable grounds, there's a field worth plowing in terms of alternative explanations for why photons go through two slits and come out diffracted. He postulated that the double slit has EM fields around something that influence output, and then said that covering up would distort the field. Yeah, well, what I said was you're going to change the pattern if you don't have a slit. If you still have a slit, then you still have, covering a slit out here 3 centimeters away couldn't possibly affect it. What I said was all you'll do is change the size of the movie projection. So if I'm shining a movie on a screen, well, if I have the screen a mile away, the movie's huge. If I have the screen 10 feet away, the movie's tiny. So all you're going to do when you shove a target that's 10,000 times closer than the other target is you'll have an image that's 10,000 times smaller. Fuckhead, I've said that in videos. That's what you're misinterpreting, is actual statements, actual metaphors of using a screen being projected. I use that metaphor in videos. And you're pretending I didn't? Fucking idiot. Influence the output, and then said that covering it up would distort the field. No, I said not having the second slit would distort the field. But from 3 centimeters? Again, 3 centimeters, you have no image on the side that from 3 centimeters. You won't see the projection because it's too small. How about this fact? We have the famous E equals, gamma MC squared formula, right? Who cares? That can be rewritten as H bar W over the wavelength of the frog. It says that as you speed up an object, it gets harder and harder to apply the same speed increase. Yeah, well, that's only when you're starting to go like the speed, especially when you start approaching the speed of light because of the mass increase theoretically. But that's also bogus. But I've also explained why that happens. The same reason that you're such a cunt, because I've explained this in videos. So the argument against Lesage gravity was that you got a friction problem, because now the universe becomes a field and you're plowing through it. Okay, so you end up with this ether argument that somehow a quantized field energy that creates gravity would end up being an ether. I argue that no, if you think about the fact of kinetic mechanics and head-on collisions being irrelevant, it doesn't matter how many head-on collisions you end up having, because they're like having no collision at all. And because everything's moving the speed of light anyway, that they're already having all the collisions at the same speed, so there's no extra momentum problem. Beyond that, my argument is that as matter is moved, it means that the bits inside the matter, the force it contains, the stuff that gives it mass, quote unquote, more of it is going that way. That means less of it's going this way and less of it's going this way. And they're the only thing you can push on. I've made these arguments. So that's why it gets hard to push something. I've said that exact thing in videos. It gets harder to accelerate something because there's less and less of it to hit. It's getting thinner and thinner. So you need more and more force to move it because it's getting invisible, quote unquote, in the tangential perpendicular dimensions, which are the ones you have to hit. It's as I speculated, that if I took matter and I could actually move at the speed of light, my argument would be is that it becomes invisible looking at it perpendicularly. You would never see it because it doesn't have any mass in that dimension. It can't reflect anything. It would be invisible. Is that totally unreasonable? Is that outrageous? Have I committed a sin against God and now I need to be persecuted? Fucking cunt. Alright. It gets harder and harder to apply the same speed increase. Yes, you'll need more energy to go faster because there's less to hit. So you need to throw more bullets at it. But according to Gary's theory, I think he said that this himself, but I don't have the link, sadly. The reason for this phenomenon is not because it absorbs more and more energy, but rather that energy is more likely to pass through the object. As stated, the extra things you're hitting with your forward movement are irrelevant. So the only ones that matter are the tangential dimensions, the perpendicular dimensions, and as stated, those dimensions are disappearing. God, you can't follow along? Now guess what? This is something testable. If more and more energy just passes through the object rather than getting absorbed, well obviously it doesn't, more and more energy doesn't pass through the object. That stuff was already going where it was going. The argument is whether you're going to be hitting more stuff. So the field is the same. All we're talking about is what happens when something goes through it. Okay? But this amount of energy is all the energy that was going to go here. So if there was stuff going from here to here, the same stuff is going from here to here. You haven't changed that by plowing through it. Idiot. You've changed what will happen to you, but you haven't changed what the universe has. Anyway, it absorbs more and more energy, but rather the energy is more likely to pass through the object. Now, guess what? This is something testable. Okay, if more and more energy is passing through the object rather than getting absorbed, then we can measure this by looking at how much heat energy is created when a collision happens. Well, again, what collision? Where's the heat created theoretically? I mean, as is sort of being understood by the whole fucking super cool superconductor thing, is that heat is really just a phenomenon of noise in a system. And if you take the noise out of the system, there's nothing to make heat out of. Heat is just really taking a form of noise or agitation that's in a system, that is energy in different frequencies and different things, and turning it into something of one frequency or one type that we can recognize. So anyway, but that's the friction in the system, right? So if you don't have noise in the system, then the system loses all of the friction. But anyway, I don't even get into that. Alright, how much energy is created when the collision happens? So again, this collision thing, again in kinetics, they're not, you have to understand, collision is the wrong word to use, and the real word to use is something like the transfer. Maybe that's appropriate. And the point is that in the proton-electron interactions, there can be a simple reflection, or there can be the more complicated reflection, which is the perpendicular one, which takes away something going this way, so it creates imbalance going this way, and it adds imbalance going this way. So in a sense, it's creating two components plus the reflection. Yeah, that's a lot. Idiot. Jackass. I mean, fucktard. People actually put lead, copper, aluminum barriers at the end of an electron. I don't know where this is going. People actually put lead, copper, aluminum barriers at the end of an electron accelerator. Oh, okay. And it matches Einstein's formula. So the energy increase gets isoformetic or whatever. Well, again, I'm not. You're saying there's a disagreement between me and this experiment. I'm saying no. You're misunderstanding of what I've said, maybe. But that's all. So you're saying there's a direct conflict. I'm saying, how exactly have you measured all the energy that went into the acceleration in the first place? Have you accounted for all those photons? You don't think they're real. You think they're virtual. So all the magnetism and everything else is all virtual free stuff that you don't have to account for. Gravity you don't have to account for. Alright? So until you account for those, don't you tell me that you know, okay, where it came from. If you are measuring something extra, that you know where it came from. I'm merely arguing that as you accelerate something very fast, you're going to have a lot of force, okay, that's still pushing it when you're measuring it. It's not going to be freely accelerating. Electrons don't freely accelerate. Electrons don't freely have a velocity. They lose it quickly. So if it's still moving very fast when you're measuring it, it's doing it because there's a ton of force coming with it. And how exactly do you know how much of the weight of the electron is the electron, the momentum, is the electron, and how much of it's the extra force you had to use to push it? How do you know that? So the energy increase gets S, well, whatever, S, whatever. I don't know. Can't see it, can't read it. This is in direct conflict with Gary's theory because you would not expect an electron to have unbounded high energy, whatever that means, just by making it get closer and closer to C. That's right. And I'm going to argue that if you're measuring the electron as gaining a huge mass, okay, because of its movement, I'm going to argue that you're not measuring the electron, you're measuring the energy it took to move the electron that fast. And I don't think you have any theory that explains how you know it's just the electron and not the force pushing it. I'm saying it's like a brick. I can throw a brick and the brick freely flies. Or I can push a brick. I don't think you have an instrument that can tell the difference. All you're seeing is the brick. And you can't see the invisible hand behind it. Is that enough to satisfy you? No, it's not even close for this ridicule and these petty remarks. My theory is within the bounds of reasonable, shithead, and you haven't counter-argued it with proof or evidence. You're just making these claims from authority, okay, and that you know better somehow, and that's it. There's not an argument here. Cunt. What kind of excuses are you going to say now? If we put a voltmeter and okay, voltmeter works on what? Movement of electrons. That's how you detect it. A photodetector. Oh, that also is actually a photomultiplier, which basically just multiplies the effect of the photon on the first electron. So it's really an electron multiplier. And a thermocouple. Oh, again, so another thing that produces ions and free electrons, and you're measuring how many electrons are moving at every single inch of the goddamn accelerator to make sure no pesky hidden electrons get away. Well, I thought we were talking about an electron, not a bunch of them, but whatever. Will that satisfy you? No. Well, I mean, you think that, okay, I make the claim that you're going to make authoritative statements about what's conclusively proven about a thing you can only see based on the marks it leaves in something else, a cloud chamber. So you're saying it's a perfectly natural circumstance for radioactive bits when they fly off of a radioactive substance in a cloud chamber. That's not an unnatural environment, that's a perfectly natural environment for them to plow through a medium full of other atoms and cause all kinds of excitements to them to create light and reflections. And that doesn't change the behavior of the things in that field at all. So, that's like almost arguing that if I talk underwater, it's just like the same thing as talking in the air, when we know it's not really the same. Alright. So, I think that's enough for this edition. There's a ton of other rude fucking shit, and a bunch of other... Well, there's only 2 more comments on this, so I can end it. Superior Mind, Gus Fang, are well-defined English much? You point out no definition. White trash fucking half-pass? Okay, so racist too. Where can I find this ironclad superior definition of photons? So again, yeah, no links to any authorities, just reference to them in vague sense. Oh shit, so mindless is going on, let's see. Yeah, well, I'll wait till next time. But I'm sure I've already done. It's the head-on collision stuff again, so we'll get to it next time. So anyway, but yes, some heads are going to roll, so to speak. I don't have to take it. I don't have to waste my time again responding to gratuitously excessive remarks. They're not on the subject. You're not making counter-arguments. You're just being insulting. And if you can't do better than that, fuck off. I don't make a video just going, Einstein was a pedophile. Einstein was a pedophile. Einstein... I don't do that. I explain why I think his theory was wrong. I've even explained how I think Einstein was one smart motherfucker to come up with an explanation that really is hard to defeat. But it's just wacky. It's silly. It's bent space. I mean, to be able to fool people with something just on its face, it sounds really stupid. Yes, the nothing tells the something what to do, and when the something does something, that tells the nothing what it did. And, it's just, they bought it. You're just like, man, that's really crazy. They actually bought this stupid theory. This was good enough explanation. Yeah, the time, it's bent. Time is a function. How can you bend a function, for fuck's sake? Anyway, I won't even get into those ridicules, but I'm just saying. You gotta do better than this. I make arguments in my videos. Not just this bullshit insult crap. Petty fucks. And again, you're under the higher obligation. When I go onto somebody else's video, I feel the obligation to be polite. Now, I'm sorry you don't want to play by those rules, but they seem logical and sensible to me. I knock on somebody else's door. I just don't barge in. And when I'm in their house, I acknowledge things I have to be respectful of. I can't go up to their little sacred Mary statue and throw it on the ground, break it, because I think it's bullshit religion. No, I have to be, if I want to make an argument, I got to be polite. You don't seem to have any of those kind of scruples, you cunts. So yeah, fuck you. Give me access to your life, give me access to the stuff that matters to you, and let me backseat drive and ridicule it and force you to defend yourself against misparaphrases and lies. Let me do it to you, fucker. Make a video, you coward. I mean a real one. Yeah. Fucking cowards.